So first of all, I'd like to welcome all of you to this round table. For the moment, it's a one-way dialogue. It will be more of a two-way thing in the near future. I welcome you to this round table. This round table is taking place on the occasion of the 75th anniversary General Assembly session of the UN and also the 20th anniversary of the UN Global Compact. My name is Philip Jennings. I'm a member of the board of the Global Compact along with my friend Roberto. And I'm a former union leader, but at the moment I'm also president of the World's Peace Bureau, the International Peace Bureau. To mark the opening of the General Assembly, the Compact has pulled together 3 days of events under the theme Uniting Business. It's giving a profile to business, but I think it's also putting business on the spot. And this is where we kick off with this roundtable. The UN Global Compact came into life at a time when the business world was considered to have troubling consequences on social justice, human rights, labor rights, the environment, and was marred with ethical failings. And the Compact was created to change all that. We started with 40 people in the summer of 2000, 40 businesses, I should say. And today, 11,000 companies have signed up to its 10 basic principles of labor rights, human rights, the environment, and anti-corruption. When we look at the world today, the Secretary General in his address earlier in the year referred to the horsemen of the apocalypse. And wherever we look, we see difficulties and crisis and problems. The COVID-19 pandemic, climate crisis, economic inequality, the frustration of people that the economy is not working for them, peace, 1 in 10 children are living in countries in conflict, human rights and labor rights under attack, and also a sense of governments going it alone and a weakening of the multilateral system. Earlier this year, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists put the doomsday clock at 100 seconds to midnight. That's the closest it's been since the doomsday clock was first published in 1947. So today, an important milestone is being made as the business leaders present have signed a statement in favor of and supporting of a renewed global cooperation. And this roundtable challenges the world of business and global institutions and civil society to seek change and to implement this statement and the commitments contained in it. How do we build back better? We've seen that businesses have made many promises to change, but what about the reality in practice? Milton Friedman says the business of business is business. Is that still applying in today's environment? And how can global leaders demonstrate courage and deliver on these commitments that are made today? We have 3 themes: peace and justice, really looking at SDG 16, but in particular as to how this commitment signed today is going to be carried out in practice. Human and labor rights, and thirdly, UN and business, and should the UN, how does business get more involved? We look to our panelists to show how they have demonstrated courage, kept and delivered their promises to change, to fulfill those broader targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have a very talented panel. I won't go into all of the biographical details because they're extensive and impressive and frightening. I'd like to start with Leslie Johnson, who's the CEO of the Lourdes Foundation, a brand new organization which is committed to changing the economic and business model, part of the Brenninkmeier family constellation of businesses and foundations. Welcome, Leslie. Our friend Charlotte Petri-Gornicka, Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF since October 2018, extensive experience in the world of international development, and she was the chairperson of an important committee at the OECD in that regard. And we know her background in development and also in support of children in Sweden and internationally. We have Martha Newton, the brand spanking new Deputy Director General of the International Labour Office. She's been in function since September 2020. Best of luck to you, Martha. Welcome on board. I don't see Mukisa Kitsuyu, the Secretary General of UNCTAD, who was foreseen. So, but we do have a Kenyan in our presence, and that's Stephen Chege of the mighty Safaricom in Kenya. 33 million subscribers, a game changer in the country and a game changer in the continent of Africa. And last but not least, Roberto Suarez, who is the Secretary General of the International Organization of Employers since 2018. I think it's the first time I've ever chaired a conversation where Roberto is a member. Roberto is a member of the panel. He represents the largest network of the private sector in the world, with more than 150 business employer organizations and 50 million companies. And they represent a powerful and balanced voice for the business at the international level. Right, to get things going, the first question that we have relates to the this commitments that were signed up for today. And to open up, let's ask Stephen, sorry. You see this commitment statement? It's a declaration by the business world that they want to change their ways. How are you going to set about this in practice at Safaricom, and to act in the general spirit of the SDG 16? And I hope by the time you start that I get some sound here, because at the minute there ain't none. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I don't know if you can hear me. And
okay, Stefan.
The Global Compact for the opportunity to speak in this roundtable. It is an important piece that we're going to discuss tonight, and I'm very excited to take part because we have some rich examples from my own company here in Kenya. I believe that the private sector companies have a very important role to play in the space of peace and justice. And they can do this, or the spirit of how they do this will be important in achieving this particular SDG. In particular, they can do this through what they stand for and how they execute it. For example, companies that stand for uplifting the rights of minorities make a big change in the countries in which they operate. In Kenya, for example, Safaricom stands for the rights of women and minorities and makes sure that they have the opportunities which may have been denied to them by the society. This is an important facet of what we do, and very proud to say that the current UNGC chairperson is from Safaricom, a testament to the kind of work that we're doing here to grow women and to ensure that they get every opportunity to succeed. So companies can actually take a stand, and through that stand, open doors that were previously not available. Again, through running companies in an ethical, transparent manner, this pushes back on issues of corruption and ill-gotten gains. Companies that act in this manner ensure that everyone in the country is able to participate and get ahead based on their work rate and not through any other means such as corruption. So Safaricom is one of the most, is held out as one of the companies that are run best from Kenya. And what we do here is that in our organizations, the procurement processes, how companies are selected to work for us, what they have to do when they're selected to work for us must resonate with also what Safaricom does, which is to ensure that all. This is important in how we deliver our role as a leading company in this area. And by working with so many different companies, we work with thousands of companies in our economy. By working with all these companies, we raise the bar by ensuring that there's a larger pool of companies complying and doing the right thing. And this leads to a good governance background. I could speak about other issues which companies need to stand for and which make a big difference in the lives of people. In this regard, I could speak about the environment. Companies can take the bold step to ensure that they operate in an environmentally sustainable manner. For example, in Safaricom here in Kenya, we are a telecoms company, but 80% of the energy that we consumed is based on renewable energy. This is a commitment to ensure that we keep away from fossil fuel energies and try and ensure that the environment is sustained in a particular way. We do know that the impacts of negative environmental degradation, the impact is largest on economies such as ours. Because of this, taking this step to use what could be more expensive energy and leave a better future for everyone is an example of how leadership in this area can make changes. Through our actions, we have inspired other companies to take our direction, and there's a very large uptake of renewable energy use in Kenya through solar and other energy sources. So these are some of the examples of how companies such as ourselves, such as Safaricom, can play an important role in harnessing the opportunities that we have of being prime movers in our economies to ensure that we achieve the social justice aspects of SDG 16. So back to you, Phillips. I don't know if you can hear me.
I think he's still working on it.
We might need to moderate ourselves.
Yeah. Well, Stefan, can I ask you a question, actually, while he gets the sound? I lived in Africa for 10 years, so Safaricom is very close to my heart and very much admired. Oh, he's back.
Really, it's not coming through. I went through all the tests the other day. It's not happening. It's therefore a significant barrier to the conversation that we're having. I'd ask you, so I don't want this to be an impediment. This is, we've only got an hour. I've been well prepared for this. I have all these questions. I'm just looking, Roberto, you're you have a great deal of experience in this field. If you could just take over the chairing of the session. The first issue is with regards to putting these commitments in practice. Yeah. And I was looking for Leslie to come in on this. The second one is about human rights and the UN guiding principles, what a business is doing in practice. And the third question is about the engagement of business in the United Nations. And how can that and how could that work, or should it work, and what would be the practical benefits of it? So look, I'm an impediment to this. Stay online, but carry on the conversation amongst you in this regard. We have until 7:30, and I'm dreadfully sorry. This is the first time it's happened to me since COVID-19 started. Sorry.
You will have always a first time. We'll talk about that, Philip. I think that Leslie was raising a question, so I will leave it to Leslie also to liaise with Stefan, because it appeared to be a very interesting conversation. So please, Leslie.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I was just singing the praises of Safaricom. But I did want to ask you, in the statement, it talks a lot about transparency and being accountable. So business being accountable, and would just love to hear a little bit more about how Safaricom is being transparent and accountable, and how it creates more trust, amongst your customers.
Okay, so this is important to us because we are by far the in this country, and when you have that attached to you, you need to live up to the tag. So we do quite a number of different things to make sure that our customers are comfortable with how we are doing business. We're first of all a mobile company, which means we have to have base stations all over the country. What we do and how we're able to roll out pretty quickly and have the whole country covered with 4G is to engage communities at a local level and make them understand the science that we currently use to extend our networks. So they then see our towers as opportunities for connectivity, which goes with security, which goes with M-Pesa and all these other businesses, and become something useful. So we started there. In terms of how we roll out our products, we always say that we need, and this is something which we have said in the past, and our previous CEO was known for saying it, we take an opportunity to put our reputation before profits. So we always take the view that what can we do to make sure that the customers' needs are met before we look at how we're going to make money. So we have a very strong social aspect to how we do business. Lots of support to communities, to schools, to health centers, to uplift the community in which we operate. And in terms of our own products, they are available at no cost for all our customers to review on the internet. All our websites that carry our information are zero-rated, so anyone can access it. We have the largest call center in East Africa for customers to call through. And we're always trying. We always judge ourselves to a high standard, and we keep on improving ways in which we can be seen to be more transparent. And this is very important for businesses in the country. And our example has been emulated by the sector, which we think is positive for Kenyans.
That's great stuff. I don't know whether Mukhisha is with us from Untact, or if not, perhaps we can leave. I have a question for you, Stephen. We have been struggling. I think there's an area where little progress has been made, even though there are some important steps, which is the informal sector, and how societies, countries, especially in many developing countries in Africa, in Latin America, but also in Asia. 60% of the occupied population is in informal. Individuals are still struggling to get out of this informal reality. A company like yours, and which also has an important supply chain components, and how on your daily life, and sorry to deviate perhaps from the initial question that Philly was asking you, how you in practical terms try to help to bring informality towards formality? And I know there are strong institutional challenges that you have to face.
So, Roberto, that proportion is very large in our country. And the way we look at it, these are also our customers. They are our primary customers. If they're in problems, we're going to have problems. So their success is also our success in a way. So what we do is quite a number of things. And during this COVID period, there are a few things we've done to make sure that they remain in business. We've continued to provide them connectivity for SMEs and MSMEs and double the capacity that they would be normally paying for. So for example, if they were paying for a package for $100, we would give them the package that is two times that. Why? Because we know maybe they cannot work where they used to work and they need to work from home and they're eating up more resources. And we said, you know what, forget about that. We'll cover that. We need you to sustain yourself, be in business so that you can be able to go through this difficult period and come out of it. So that's a measure we are doing. We have a lot of data around our SMEs and MSMEs, and there's currently a discussion we're having internally, and it's been discussed at various levels in the country, for having a fund for lending money to these SMEs to keep them going so that they can also grow, the ones that are able to become bigger organizations, and the ones that still need some time before they grow will not have the need to, fold because of how the economy is right now. So we are looking at it in two ways, supporting them through our technology, through our network, and also thinking of a financing platform to be able to put money in their pockets so that they can survive this. And we're going to do this possibly through M-Pesa, which is very well entrenched in Kenya.
Interesting how the new technologies also can help also to promote these transitions. It's something to be explored. If I may go, and I'm replacing myself spontaneously, Phil, but I would like to go to UNICEF, Charlotte. I think the tradition of an organization like UNICEF working with the private sector is strong. Also, you have a strong due diligence approach that we all know when working with business, how we can engage better in the UN in general, but also with organizations like yours. How can we, and it's also a very decentralized organization, I would say, as an agency. It's completely different from others. So it would be great to have your insights on how the business community really can do better in terms of contributing to the achievements of the SDGs, but also collaborating with organizations like yours.
Well, thank you so much for that question. I actually think we need to help each other to do better, because we are, UNICEF is fantastically well placed. And I'm not as new as Marta to your organization, but I am still, compared to many other people working for UNICEF, I am still a bit new. So and one of the reasons why I really wanted to join UNICEF was because of the role UNICEF plays. UNICEF is present in 190 countries. We're operational on the ground in both humanitarian and development settings, meaning, for instance, in COVID, that we were already there, and we have a short, mid-term, long-term perspective, but we also have the normative role, which led to, for instance, when we started to engage around child rights and business with the Global Compact, we used the normative part of our mandate. So we're fantastically well placed as a partner, both as a kind of a watchdog, but not only a watchdog. It's about trying to make sure that policies become practice. We have, together with companies now, started to work on how can we make sure there are measurements, that there are indicators in the ESG, that there is, disclosure. So that's part of what we do. But I would also say that what I think we still need more of together is the not only the good examples, but the examples. And we also need to realize that when you work with UNICEF, we should not continue to do small projects, honestly. We're everywhere, we're big. We should try to learn from what's out there and bring it to scale and work with perhaps a little bit of a more challenging problem. So, and I don't believe in the long term that one UN organization should try to get all the companies to itself. I really think around the SDGs, around goal 16, but also goal 17, we need to think, it's easier when you talk about funding. We need to go from funding to financing. We need to go from talking about partnering with an agency to really work for impact for children's rights. And UNICEF and UN can build very exciting platforms for this. I will give you one example, and then I will ask you for a bit of advice. So one example, it is with UNICEF NGOs, World Economic Forum. We have come together some years ago around the value chain of batteries. We're there from a child rights perspective, from end to end. We know that batteries influence the footprint in a positive way, but we also know that the value chain has opportunities and risks. And at the end, the entry point, if you will, when the increasing demand on batteries line up a lot of demand on mining and getting the different pieces of the battery together, there is a huge risk of increasing child labor, for instance. And we don't want to feel good about ourselves in my part of the world, knowing that when I buy, if I can afford, a car running on a battery, I actually increase the risk of child labor. We want to know that recycling factories are not built in my part of the world necessarily, but in perhaps other parts of the world where it can mean opportunity for labor for young people in a sustainable way. So this value chain is important. UNICEF could not do this by ourselves. Of course not. It has to be driven by business and authentically driven by business. So what I find important for us is we are part of a wider coalition of the willing. We're addressing a bigger issue. We're addressing it from an old problem, if you will, child labor, to a new challenge, which is climate. And UNICEF brings our operational skills in DRC and financing skills. And I think we need more of those examples. So here is my question to you. In the UN system, I don't know if you can navigate in the UN system because there are many entry points. And going forward now, we cannot afford that. We're trying to make multilateralism efficient and effective. So Global Compact, UNICEF, and what other parts of UN? How do you want to make it work? I need in UNICEF to get our act together. So how can I, with your help, get UN to partner with this? Because there's such a potential. I think I've ended. I've used all my time now, so over.
So listen, you are doing like many people. I'm Spanish, and in the north of Spain, Galicians are very known because when they ask you a question, you ask them question, they answer with another question, which is basically. But this is very, very, very learning. I mean, it's a really learning mood that the approach that you have taken. I think that there is, and that's my my perspective, taking into consideration our experience during the last decades. I mean, I would say 10 years or 15 years working also with the UN family, even though we have been working with the UN and with the ILO for 100 years, I would say in the last years, our problem is a problem of communication very often. So the language that we are using, and in IOE we are very used to the language that UN is using, but business is not familiar at all. The SDGs have helped because we are more and more aligning, and Stephen, you know that well, objectives, and that's a helpful tool. But there is a problem of common language. There is a problem of rhythm. The rhythm of business, nothing to do with the rhythm of big international organizations. And I know it very well also, because, and also the delivery approach is sometimes different. What an individual company is foreseeing as a deliverable is not exactly the same as an international organization, which sometimes is looking for policy change, not exactly. So that's another problem. But I agree with you on your question, because you need, at the end of the day, there are many initiatives, there are many multi, stakeholder approach, and there is a need to coordinate better, to strengthen better the way a company deals with the UN system as a whole. I wouldn't call for monopolies. We are working closely with the UN Global Compact. I want to thank also them for involving us. That's an example of how we can do partnership. But there is a need also to be much more convergent to overcome these challenges. Because at the end of the day, this is Philip, you're back.
Hello, everybody.
Can you hear us?
Working now. I'm on another device.
Okay.
You're getting two of me. My mother would be very happy.
Okay.
Can I just say on this subject? I've listened to everything. Roberto, in particular, Leslie, I was interested in your in the new foundation that you are now the chief executive officer of, and you're very bold. You want a new business model, a new economic model, and you talk about the UN guiding principles becoming mandatory. In one of the blogs, there's a blog on the website which I managed to dig into just to prove that I did some spade work here. Why are you saying that? There seems to be the evidence out there from Just Capital, from the World Benchmark Alliance, from the Alliance for Corporate Transparency, and even at the Compact, declarations in favor of human and labor rights, but not realized in practice. How are we going to change this, Roberto? If you have 50 million businesses, Leslie, you're seeking to lead the way in this. How do we get this to apply in practice?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if I may, that is the ultimate question, and just a little bit of context. So I'm not coming from business. I'm coming from a foundation under a business family, but I have spent many years in business in my own career. And what we're trying to do with philanthropic capital is essentially try to nudge, sometimes inspire, sometimes challenge, sometimes prod business and industry and finance to do better. And that's really what we're trying to do in philanthropic capital. I think is an interesting pot of gold to use to try to do that. Now, the challenge that I see, and I saw this for many years when I was running another foundation, CNA Foundation in the fashion industry, is that no amount of self-governance by business is going to get us to the transformation that we need to see in the system. What it will get us to is optimization of the current system. A little less water, a little less energy, slightly improved working conditions for garment workers, et cetera, et cetera. And those aren't bad things. I think that a lot of businesses mean well when they're on their sustainability journey and they want to try to do good in the world. But sometimes just doing a little bit of good is not good enough, because we really need to focus on what is it going to take to actually transform the system. And that to me is the major question, because the system, well, if you look at the economic system, it actually works pretty well. It's the businesses are responding to the incentives that are in place. It's running on the neoliberalism capitalist model, which is running very smoothly. But unfortunately, that means that people and planet suffer, at the, for profit, effectively. And to change that, you have to change the rules of the system. And that's why I feel personally, and I think as a foundation, we do a lot of work on how do you change the rules? Because the rules are those enabling policies that actually govern the way that we all operate.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Roberto?
Not exactly coinciding 100% with the approach of Leslie. I have to say that there is a common point between what you have said and my perspective. This common point is very often we look at business as individual financial donors. Sometimes we forget that they have and Charlotte, you refer to that, to a great degree of expertise, creativity, innovation. I mean, if you look at climate change, many of the alternatives that you are now witnessing is due also to the entrepreneurship of many individuals that are being able to precisely take the lead on that. But beyond that, and that's the point where I have a important point for coincidence with Leslie, I think that we have to look at business and also in its capacity to help to change the policies. It's not just about, individual contributions, which are great. And there are, examples like Safari are creating a critical mass. I would be a little bit more optimistic than Leslie on that. A critical mass of companies that are also changing the approach. And you can see that clearly. But I would say that what you need is the right regulation, the right implementation at national level. And there, business has a responsibility. In the ILO, we have important examples of how things, and you know it, Philip, very well. When we act together to change policy, and I'm not going to mention countries, things change. Well, I can mention Qatar. Now they have removed the kafala system because of this joint approach, and also an extraordinary cooperation of the government of Qatar. But this is precisely because there is a policy change where business community as a whole has engaged. And that's where I have a coincidence with Leslie.
I know you beg to differ with Leslie, so I'm just saying that when we look at the data and when we try to measure what is declared and what is actually implemented, there's a massive chasm between we declare that we are in favor of the ILO core conventions, the OECD guidelines, the UNGPs, but when you look at the actual execution, it's not happening.
You mean the actual execution by companies or by governments? Because that's different. What you have to bear in mind is that the ratification of a convention is not precisely an implementation of this convention. It's already a step. Don't underestimate that. But the problem that we have is implementation.
The problem we have implemented, the European Union, I think, has had enough, and they're now actively considering publishing new legislation on for due diligence, on the adverse consequences of corporate behavior, on human rights down the supply chain and elsewhere. Stephen, you're a legal man. Do you need the law to tell you to do these things? Don't you think it would be better for Safaricom and all those other businesses in the world that are trying to do the right thing, that the playing field was level in this regard? That the UN guiding principles were simply adopted and implemented and become part of the law of the land? What's your thinking?
Yeah, Philip, I agree. And when I spoke earlier, I talked about how companies can have an approach that leads to a lot of things that are positive. Companies could take the view that, laws will be implemented at a national level, SDGs will be implemented by the governments, let's sit back. That, we feel, is the wrong way to go about things. You need to step into the breach and actually lead the thought leadership, lead the action, lead the financing of some of these events so that they become a reality and they become well practiced. So mine would be to say, I think companies have a very important role to play and they shouldn't hold back. Nothing, prevents positions on very important things to the community and also to business.
Yeah, thank you. I like this idea of not holding back. We had a conversation last week with the UN Secretary General, and his message was exactly the same. Don't hold back. He claimed, he said he made observations and responsibility. Don't wait. Don't hold back. I think that would be a good takeaway from this, because what this declaration that has been signed by business today is basically saying that. Don't hold back. Marta, what's your thinking on this? Welcome, by the way. If you can hear me.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Great. It's great to be here. I'm still in the drinking water from a fire hose stage of the job. I've, got about 2 weeks under my belt, but it's good to be with you all and really to be listening, because just framing one of the reasons that I wanted to join the ILO, which obviously as a tripartite organization, has this incredible opportunity, because actually employers are voting members of the body, and how when you can, get workers, employers, and government together to work on a common purpose. I've seen magic happen and make real meaningful change in people's lives, but it's also messy. It takes a long time. So to Roberto's point, some of the, business and the capabilities of business and some of the innovation, I'm just getting, as far as us to be as nimble. And I think in the context of COVID is an example right now where being able to be, nimble and fluid as an organization. I'm obviously, diving in on the ILO's role in the socioeconomic response and the important role that we're playing. But I've also seen just being able to, turn things on a dime in a tripartite body, just as right now, Roberto, as we're preparing for our upcoming governing body, and just the challenge of us having a virtual convening, that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And I think probably for me, as I'm coming in, is I have a different probably than some of my past predecessors in this job, in that I'm very policy focused, but I'm a policy wonk trapped in an operational body. So I'm part of what I think our challenge is, and quite frankly opportunity, is how to you have this policy, and as you alluded, a declaration or that it's not applied into practice. A lot of time I think we have these policy statements, and then where the rubber hits the road, and whether that's helping a government or strengthen their national response and framework, or helping as far as business in their responses. I mean, there's no doubt, obviously you all would be here, that the business case, we've seen I think bright examples, obviously, in the garment sector, with the Better Work program here at the ILO, where, you've seen, to me, it's just a solid example of being able to, have, contribute to challenges, but also seeing productivity rise for companies. But I also, too, I think one of the challenges is we have a strong role to play, obviously our normative, very strong role to play, but we also, I'll just be frank, looking right now, one of the biggest challenges is looking at the issue of supply chains and understanding people who are making decisions on supply chains, understanding how a supply chain, how a supply chain works. These are, as we're, coming in, and obviously I can speak from, wearing a former government hat, but I do believe that the ILO, that multilateralism right now, more than ever, and international cooperation, is going to be the way. Particularly COVID, it demands of us. So I'm glad to be here, just listening and learning from you all. And we'll see. Let's reconvene in 1 year, and we'll see if my I hope I still have my half glass full attitude, but I'm glad to be here.
Our aim is to fill the glass. The tripartite model of the ILO is an inspiration and is a model of how to get things done in a time of great confrontation and great divisions in society. We need to find ways of dialogue and working together. Next year is the year for the elimination of child labor. And Charlotte, it's a big year for UNICEF. What's your message to business to try and, at long last, to get rid of child labor in the supply chains? And may I also add, I was part of the Rana Plaza Agreement. This was negotiated those years ago. That was a legally binding agreement, by the way, the first of its kind. There's a great deal of trepidation at the beginning, but we made it work. I have to say, we made it work with CNA. They were on board, and 200 So I think it was 200 plus companies were on board. So this we did illustrate we can get this done. Charlotte, the big, the human rights of children and the dangers that they now face, COVID-19, and we're worried about resurgence in child labor. What's your business be doing to make sure that doesn't happen?
God, they should not hold back. So the thing is that we cannot only address child labor, even because what we are really worried about is that the socioeconomic consequences for children will be is already a real setback. So more children are in extreme poverty already this year. So we need to think about this social unrest. So what we need to do is to create jobs as well as create good quality jobs. So we cannot, as UNICEF, not only focus on child labor as something we need to get rid of, if you see what I mean. We really need to think much broader than that, and what kind of labor. And we need to think through how the technology can, lead to at least that we don't lose generations because they will fall even more behind. Because what we've learned right now during COVID is how important it is to be digital savvy. We just experienced, but we have learned a lot. A lot is possible, and there's a debate around education. Is remote learning and good or bad? And it's not black and white. We have learned a lot that you can actually access education online if you are connected and if we can have good quality input. And there is a whole industry now who's doing well. And that industry should put its act together and invest in technology jobs for next year. And I know you won't ask me again because time is running. So can I just take the opportunity to, Leslie, you talked a little bit in the chat box around, where are we on this? Is it, are we still in the field of, it's easier to kind of get rid of the bad rather than to really incentivize the good. And going back to the UN, I think there is an actor that we need to bring into the forefront a little bit more, and that's the investors, the big investors. The pension funds, because it's not only where they put their money, they are the shareholders. And that BlackRock, his CEO, do you know what he did with Volvo in Sweden? He went out and he said, we're not going to give renewed trust to the board chair, the chair of the board, because there's nothing on climate in the annual report. I mean, it's just an example that the voice is there, and we work with investors in how to put more kind of name and shame tools. So I would say bring in the investors to this next year as well. So
Hear, hear.
Good idea. I know at the within the Global Compact we have a large investor community which has a whole series of initiatives and proposals in place with regard to the climate crisis and in terms of human and labor rights to try and mobilize this community. And it's that community which is putting a lot of pressure on Roberto's membership, I imagine.
So that's undeniable, Philip. I mean, and that's perhaps the best way forward. I have to recognize. I mean, it's shareholders, it's investors, but also consumers. I mean, you refer to regulation, which I respect, and I am a lawyer. I have this background. I'm not a totally convinced believer on law as a solution, but I think that the real driver of change is when people attitudes change. And I really think that many of the approach that companies are taking is because of the pressure that they receive on their own shareholders, their investors, and also by the consumers. I mean, there's a joint effort, of course, and you need to distinguish, Phil, you need to make, if you enter into the litigation dynamic, I think that can also have counter effects. I think that at the end of the day, you need a mix in which you really incentivize those are taking this seriously. Of course, when things are badly done, there should be also, especially when you communicate broadly that you are committed and then you are not committed. I understand that you have to take the risk of doing that, but I believe really on the stimulus of shareholders or investors, of consumers. That's the best approach, the most efficient. really. And of course, of employees also.
Okay, that's a clear point of view that you are expressing. But there is so much dissatisfaction out there in the world. And when we did our global poll just last week, and we haven't seen numbers like this. This economy doesn't work for us. My children are going to be worse off than us. We don't feel that the business community really cares about us. And then we have the business community signing up for United in the business of a better world and for renewed global cooperation. So I think we need more of a push. We need more vocal. We need more messages from the world of business. And
I think it's not just about messages, Bill. I mean, we are all pushing in the same direction.
Yeah,
I think that what we have is to be able to deliver. Essentially, you know how very well the debates in the UN, we are very much used to that. We have to identify action from all sides. And it's not just the side of business. We always say that, but there is a degree of responsibility in the business community. We agree on that.
Well, I think my challenge to all business leaders is that they adopt a corporate policy with their boards, that they will apply the UN guiding principles and due diligence measures within the next calendar year. But that's just a wish. And that would be some very positive action. That will change the frame of thinking. That would be consistent with the commitments made today. And it would be consistent, I think, with the spirit of the UN Global Compact. And we're also tactic. I'd just like to say we have a new executive director, Sander, and we're talking about, well, how can we improve performance? What do we have to do? How do we evolve our integrity measures? How do we get the practical, the practice of human rights in business? And one of the messages coming back from the surveys that were done is we need more help in this regard. I see some great possibilities for the UN Global Compact and the UN and the ILO in this regard. Sitting down with human resources managers, I don't want to sound naive either in talking like this, but there was a kind of an appeal for help coming forward to raise the bar and to raise the floor in the spirit of what Stephen said, not holding back. We have 10 minutes to go. There was a question, a last question. It's UN 75. I suppose the relationship of business to the UN has been controversial in some respects. I think Kofi Annan was trying to change that with the UN Global Compact. What does it look like going forward? UN business going forward, and what steps do you see in terms of what the UN can do to try and encourage business not to hold back? Stephen, does it ever come across your agenda, UN issues, in your day-to-day?
Yes, they do, Philip. I mean, in terms of how you reframe, how your business exists. The way we look at it is our business exists within the community. And if the community is not successful, we are unlikely to be successful. It also exists within an environment. If the environment is degraded beyond a certain point, then it becomes a reality that our business will not be sustainable. So those are the kind of lenses that we use, to guide us in how we should operate within that space. And because of that, we take the bold steps that will preserve the environment and also the bold steps that protect the community. The community, of course, there's so many things that are important in a country like ours. But companies that actually see that as a way of them surviving the near term, we feel have a bigger opportunity of being successful for long. Short-term, quick profits, and then you go bust. I don't think that's good for shareholders. I don't think that's good for the country. I don't think that's good for anyone.
Yeah, you sound very much like the president or the chairperson of the Global Compact, Paul Pullman, who is always talking about this. And I was interested to read that the company Safaricom, I think, has adopted 9 of the 16 Sustainable Development Goals and is actively executing the implementation of those Sustainable Development Goals in business. I mean, this is quite. How unique is this, Roberto? Would you say, for a company to say we're going to actively implement these Sustainable Development Goals
the SDGs are
corporate policy
are 17, so it's a broad. You have to identify the ones that fit better,
17.
and I don't think it's a question just of a statement or a commitment of the board, which is important because it's a political engagement at the top of the company. It's also how you operationalize that. Okay, so how do you identify, for instance, of alleviating poverty, decent work in your own operation? Also, regarding child labor in supply chains, I mean, there are many ways in you have to handle that in a realistic manner, but with ambition there. And so you have indicators, you have ranking of indicators, you have processes internally. I also want to call the attention on small and medium companies, because sometimes we are just thinking about corporations, but at the end of the day, the ones that also sometimes are making the difference are small and medium. And that's where we need also to adapt, not just the language, but the way we operate. If you want us to change the model, okay? And that's where I really want to, perhaps a new push. Also, how you see, and just a final point, very quickly, UN 75, I think that the business community should be together strengthening the role of multilateralism. This is the time now to avoid a wide questioning of what the multilateralism has brought for society. So that's where also, again, a policy approach from business as a global community can really make a difference. And we are all very, very committed with other partners, not just alone IOE, with other partners, to help to change the narrative. In many countries, this is really getting worrying and
important. Leslie, you have some thoughts on business and United Nations and multilateralism and
yes,
how can we strengthen it?
Well, I think and Robert, I do agree with you in many aspects. I don't think we're too far apart, but I think part of the challenge is almost this expectation that business needs to carry the load. And the reality is we all need to. So I do think that these coalitions of unlikely allies are critical for us to get to the world that we want to see. And for that to happen, we need to allow business to do what it does best. And part of the challenge, I think, right now is that the system and maybe the structures behind it don't allow business essentially to report on value that goes beyond share price. And if we actually redefine what value looks like for business, you put people back into that, you put environment and biodiversity back into that, you put climate into that, then making profit starts to look a lot different and makes it easier for business to make these bold and brave decisions to stand up. So that needs to happen. And I think that's where the UN can play a really important enabling role. Governments can play an enabling role, and business can do its job that's supposed to do, which is step up, make money, but also have a positive impact on the world.
Okay. Sorry, Stephen? Did I see an indication you'd like to speak?
I was just agreeing very strongly with what Leslie is saying. I mean, it sounds like the blueprint that should be used.
Well, and I think just in speaking, I mean, if you look at the survey, and obviously I've been looking at kind of the impact work related to to the 75th anniversary, and it's demanded of us. I mean, when this survey was done, it was 87%. I think that international cooperation is absolutely vital to dealing with today's challenges. And I think COVID, and I mean, I give good examples of the IOE and ITUC in the midst of COVID signing a joint agreement. The ILO was born of crisis, back in the history in the First World War. And I think, this is an opportunity. Like I said, I had we haven't talked as far as the UN system, but I had the opportunity to participate in the high level human rights dialogue on the impact of COVID-19 and the focus of work and so obviously a very important health component, but just heard again and again, we all this, we don't want backsliding, whether it's our Brisbane commitments on gender, or whether on child labor and forced labor. We can't have this recovery be borne on the backs those individuals who right now, quite frankly, are more vulnerable than ever because of how, individual people aren't able to, are limited in their, whether it's quarantining or limited in their work environment. And so I think, it's not about just innovating. It's really, making sure that this critical time that we don't backslide on this momentum. So it's definitely an interesting time to join the UN system. But like I said, particularly with the ILO, when you have this ability to look at issues and have really frank social dialogue on these matters, I mean, that's where we can see meaningful change.
I think the ILO structure is unique in the UN system, tripartite with government, employers, and unions. We have real discussions. Roberto and I, over the years, didn't always agree, but we always did our best to try and make progress. Because at the end of the day, it's a consultation, it's an exchange of information, exchange of arguments, sometimes arm wrestling, but at the end of the day, there's a commitment to making progress. And I think this message that the ILO brings about decent work and about the future of work and the disability, which I observe closely of the global trade union movement and the IOE, and then at a national level, people pulling together, that all of a sudden maybe some of those differences that were there or obstacles that were there were swept aside as we were concerned about the common good. And I hope that as a result of this UN 75, this big moment in time, that in terms of building back better, we can make progress in this regard to improve the common good. I don't think we will resolve the relationship of the private sector to the UN in a conversation such as this. But I know at the UN Global Compact, there are now 11,000 companies. I mean, this was unthinkable when we started. I was there 20 years ago. And the numbers are rising rapidly, Roberto. We've seen this. And therefore, part of the process will be at the UN Global Compact is when you have this scale as an organization, is to try and lift the behavior and the performance of companies in terms of the principles. And in that way, you have a more, how can I put it, I can't find the word, a more responsible gateway for this participation to take place. And that's why the UN Global Compact is now going through another strategic review in this regard. I apologize for the problems at the beginning, and it put me off balance, which is most uncomfortable. We have a few minutes left. Stephen, you won the day with no holding back. Do you have anything else? What more takeaways have you got for us and for the audience out there as a result of your experience back home and what you've listened to today? Everybody has a chance to come in with a zinger that we'll never forget.
Maybe I will quit while I'm ahead. But it's just to encourage businesses to not shy away, to take their place in these important decisions that are made in countries, not to look at their bottom line alone, but just to look long-term, how they will stay successful, which is, I think, by making sure the environment and the community in which they operate is uplifted.
Yeah. Can I? Thank you. Leslie?
Yep. So I loved what Charlotte said about we need to go from funding to financing, because I think that encapsulates what needs to happen. Business needs to look at this in the long term, as Stephen just said, but also we need to really look at the role of financiers, pension funds, insurance companies, debt providers. All those hold the power because money talks. So the focus on the finance sector, I think, is critical. And that's one reason why we as a foundation focus there. So it was great to call out the role of finance.
Very good. Charlotte?
Well, thank you, because we need exactly this. We need to know where our allies are. And money talks. So one thing that I told you earlier on, that UNICEF's got a normative role, which means we can cajole business around what they need to change. But there's another side of this. It's business voice. there are situations where you are much stronger when it comes to change a policy in a country. I have experienced a lot around, LGBT rights and where companies kind of took a stance, and that voice was stronger because a country ran the risk of, brands shying away from that country. So we should not underestimate the roles we can play on this agenda together. And one final thing is, I would love if we can, through Global Compact, shine the light on things that are happening now because of COVID, where we came together and we took some risk. Because what is also hindering and hampering some action is that we are so risk averse. And obviously we want to live up to the principles, but there are other reasons for why we are risk averse. So if we could show a little bit of examples of what happened when we had no choice, then move fast and together. So UN 75.
Yeah. Okay. UN Roberto. Oh. All of a sudden,
very much insist on the last point. I think policy change at global and local level will make a difference, especially for the informality, for the 60% of the occupied population, 80% in many countries. Yeah. You refer to the LGBTI rights. I can tell you the example of 2 years ago when we have the Convention on Violence and Harassment, the business community was very vocal on defending LGBTI rights. Even despite the strong pressure of some governments, I can tell you. But I can give you other examples in which acting locally in countries with our members and we pushing makes a difference to change regulations and implementation approach. So that's where I would put the emphasis. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Roberto. Marta?
Thank you, and thank you all. Can you hear me? Sorry, thanks so much for the opportunity to join you all. And I think just in closing back, the business is absolutely essential. I mean, when Roberto alluded to Qatar, and for some of us, I don't like to say older, I like to say more seasoned, who remember many years ago, where really business and business had, everyone played their appropriate role. The ILO through the strong, frameworks brought, Qatar and brought these issues to light to the world. Business, and in the context of the World Cup, demanded that these things happen. But more importantly, at the national level, and this is where really that the government committed at the national level as far as building, a functioning labor inspectorate, making sure now that workers, domestic workers, can access their wages, making sure that workers can hold on to their own passports. I mean, all of this was really because of the enthusiasm that business and consumers, brought to bear to bring this to light. And so, I give it. There's still a lot of work to do, but if you see the news, just in the last few weeks in Qatar and what's been announced, this is real, and really it's an example of, business was the lever that pushed to set this all in motion. And after the ILO used, like I said, we have the tools to bring to bear, but business held them accountable, and it's creating meaningful change. Yeah. And thank you all for, it's been great to participate this evening.
Well, I have to say, Stephen, thank you. Leslie, all the best in this new function that you have. I know you have a great deal of experience in the CAA Foundation. I wish you all the best. It's good to see powerful women in powerful positions, and that we have a gender equality. We haven't spoken about gender equality today, but nevertheless, to have three powerful women on this panel, I think is a very important message. You mentioned Money Talks. I started my union career organizing bank workers in the City of London. And so I understand the power of money, and I understand the use of it. And I've spent a great deal of my union life trying to bring reform to the world of finance, that they act in a more ethical and responsible way. And I think there has been, in some regards, quite some change in thinking. I like this idea of no holding back. I think that's the message from the UN Secretary General. I sense his frustration and his anguish that the world is in such a place that it's not a time for business to say, well, is this social responsibility thing worth it? Or is this desire for us to make a new and a better deal and to build a better world? I would encourage business to take the initiative, to be bold and to say, we will, okay, Milton Friedman had his time. We're now in a new era.
Mm-hmm.
We have a climate crisis. We have a social crisis. We have a political crisis. We have a financial crisis. And people need some hope. People need to see that there's some real change about to happen, that things will be different. You've talked about informal sector. All of a sudden, I don't know, but the numbers are extraordinary. All of a sudden, 1 billion people have the income tap cut off with no idea where's the next penny coming from, where's the next cent coming from. All of this should drive home the message that we need a United Nations which has that spirit from its creation, built from the ashes of war, like the International Labour Organization, that we're all committed to the common good. That in Safaricom is committed to the common good of all Kenyans and of all Africans. That the Lowndes Foundation will bring about economic change. And Charlotte, I know the slogan from the UNICEF is, and we never give up. Don't give up in your struggle for the rights of children in this world. Martha, all the best to you. You're going to have a over at the International Labour Office. And when you started talking about policy wonk and operational effectiveness, you're going to fit in just fine over there with those kinds of descriptions. Roberto, my friend, I wish you all the best. Thank you for your contribution. It's a great big year for the also 100 years old. Roberto's bringing a spirit of innovation and constructive dialogue to the organization, which bodes well for all of us. So in the end of the day, we could communicate. I hope the audience that is listening in has enjoyed these exchanges. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your cooperation. And thank you for the passion and the commitment that you brought. Thank you very much. And goodbye.